have a question. What is your favorite song and how do you connect with it? Is it when you fell in love or through something really difficult? I'm your host, Tiffany Mason. Now join me as I interview others and we take a walk down memory lane with them. Let's get lost in why that music matters to them. Turn up your radio and let's explore Memories with a Beat. Hello, Podcast Land. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Memories with a Beat. And y'all, I just keep finding amazing people that want to talk about music, and I am so thankful for their time and just what they bring to the conversation. So today I have with me Avery Thatcher, and she picked such a great song. I cannot wait to dive into it. But first, Avery, welcome to Memories with a Beat.
Thank you so much for having me, Tiffany. I cannot wait to talk about this song.
It's so good, and I've never heard it before, so I'm really excited to dig in and see where and how and why you connect to it. But first of all, if you would, let my audience know just a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. I think the most notable thing is that my first name when I grew up wasn't Avery. It's only been in the past 6 months or so that I've switched my name, and it's been such an interesting transformation, and this song really ties into everything that happened that led me to that. So
I'll say, okay.
My whole journey really has been diving in and rediscovering who I truly am, not who other people said I should be. So Over my lifetime, I've gone through a lot of different career options and changes. I've been a registered nurse in an ICU for a while. I've worked in corrections. I've done in children's ICU. I've started my own business. So it's just been this beautiful journey.
Okay. And are you married or do you live near family?
Yes, I'm married. My husband and I have been married since 2018, but we've been together for about 10 years.
Okay.
We've moved all across Canada. Just every 2 years we seem to move. So my husband and I always joke like, hey, so we're here for at least 2 years. So we'll see.
We used to almost joke, hey, Mom, Dad, we're moving. Just put it in pencil. Just put it in pencil because it's going to be changing soon. So we've been a bit of a nomad too.
Yeah, love it. It's just such a neat way to explore. Learn more about yourself.
What is the reason why you guys have been relocating? Just because or work or?
Work and school. My husband wanted to get his master's program and it's only particular universities that provided that. So then we moved across the country with a cat and a guinea pig in the car, which was good time, for 5 days of driving. And then we were there for 2 years while he got his degree. And then we moved to the opposite coast.
Okay.
Which was 7.5 days of driving with 2 cats, a dog, and a guinea pig in the car.
Oh my gosh.
I just remember we were sitting outside in this one little town we'd pulled over just for ice cream, and we're sitting there eating ice cream with like all the animals running around, and people are just walking by looking in the car like, what's going on in there? We're just like, just look away. We just need ice cream. Look away.
So now are you closer to the Pacific coast?
So now we've actually moved back to the Rocky Mountains. So we're just north of Montana.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Interesting. I've interviewed a couple of people from Canada, and actually my very best friend when I had a 1-year-old was from Canada. So
wonderful.
I've known a couple. She always used to say if there was a vowel at the beginning of the word, she would say it a little bit more strongly. So like enough, my opinion, that kind of thing. And so I picked that up from her. And then I remember when she said pasta, and I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, do you want some pasta? And I was like, what's that? She's like, pasta? I was like, oh, sure. Yeah, that sounds great. So it's funny to go over just some of those, tomato pronunciations.
That's neat because everybody tells me that like I have a Canadian accent and I'm like, okay, I don't know what that sounds like. But when you give those details, I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe that's it.
I can hear it just a little bit when you say some things. I can hear it just a little bit. So
sneaks out a little.
Anyways, yeah. So I'm intrigued. Why did you choose the name Avery, and what made you change your name? I mean, you have to go through a process to like change it. So did you legally change it, or are you just asking people to call you something different?
The process to legally change it is in the works. So like you have to do the fingerprinting and then the police checks and all of that stuff has to go through the process. So that's happening at the moment. But yeah, so I grew up as a highly emotional person in a very analytical family. So there was a lot of struggle that came from that. And then I just had been through a lot. There was a lot of different instances, lots of different health concerns that came my way, and they all changed me a little bit here and there. Yeah. And I just grew through it and moved on. And then Christmas morning, 2018, I was coming off a 12-hour night shift at a pediatric ICU, and the charge nurse looked me in the eye and she was just like, oh, Heather, you do not look good. I'm going to put you down as sick tonight. Feel better.
I was surprised that she was saying, like, you don't look well. I'm putting you down as sick. Go home.
Yeah, so it was really kind. And then I slept for 20 20 hours that day. I slept for 20 hours the next day and the day after that. And just overnight, I developed a chronic illness and a disability, and it changed everything. I could no longer work in a hospital as a registered nurse. I could no longer be active like I used to. I could no longer be the person that I was used to being. And so I struggled for about 2 years before I realized I need to stop trying to be who I used to be.
Sure.
I need a fresh start. And so then I chatted it over with my husband a little bit. I went through baby name blogs, and the only name that jumped out at me was Avery.
Okay.
And once I decided that name was mine, I felt at home in my body. The PTSD dreams stopped. All of the stress and severe OCD symptoms stopped. And it was all just because I had given myself permission to be at home, to reinvent. And it's just been such a neat experience.
Wow. My mind is completely blown. I have so much to say. First of all, were you married that day in December when the charge nurse sent you home?
Yeah, we had been married for 3 months.
So you were already married. Oh my gosh. And what did your husband say to them sending you home and then after you slept so much?
I think he was just really concerned because they also, they found a thyroid mass that had grown very quickly, because in my wedding photos, you can't see it at all. And then by December, when they did the first ultrasound, it was about 3 inches wide. So there was a lot of things that kind of piled in at one point, and we didn't know what all of this was. Was it cancer? Was it MS? Was it lupus? Was it all of these different things? And so it was just this whole year of painful tests and a lot of fear of the unknown. And then because of my experiences growing up and the difficulty to trust and this hyper independence, my husband couldn't even come to the first couple of appointments with me. And then he was eventually able to come and drop me off but wait in the parking lot. And then he was able to come into the waiting room. And finally, when he was able to come into the doctor's office with me, I was just like, why didn't I do this to start with? This is so much better. But I just, because of the trauma, wasn't able to let him in. So yeah, it's been a journey. And I am so grateful for his patience.
Wow. Oh my gosh, if there was something that was going to prove his commitment to you, that was it right there, hey?
Right? Yeah, in sickness and in health came a lot faster than we expected.
Oh my gosh, wow, that is a journey. Holy cow. Well, I've had an episode where we talked about it, and I've listened to a couple of episodes of just this identity shift after loss, so you lost this identity of being this ICU nurse, which, I mean, quite honestly, it has some cool bragging, right? Like when you say it to somebody, they're probably very impressed, right? And then you go to that's taken away from you where you just like, who am I now?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so I was working with a very good therapist at the time, and she was saying that a lot of what I was describing and experiencing was like when people leave the military, because especially people with trauma when they leave the military, because your military family or your ICU family, they become your blood.
Sure.
Because your blood wasn't there in the same way that you needed them. So then because you're letting them down. And then with this pandemic, you hear the ICUs getting flooded and overwhelmed. And I'm like, I should be there. Why can't I be there? So there was this big identity crisis. It's absolutely what you described.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. Have you ever considered doing your Akashic records? I only say that because I'm so intrigued with, one day you were this person, or, I mean, you're still the same person, but you've gone through a lot of change, and even so much so that you're changing your identity to be Avery. I wonder if there's anything have you heard of the Akashic records before?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever explored them?
A little bit back when I still identified as Heather. So I think, that's a great idea. I think I need to dive back into that now.
Yeah, that's really what comes to my mind when I think about this whole journey. And the only way I can understand what you're saying, and this is kind of weird, and I've never had anybody that had the same experience, so I think you can appreciate this. I used to have long hair, and 14 years ago, we went to my sister's house. She had short hair like my hair is now. And my hair kept getting caught in my lip gloss. And I was like, this is so annoying. And we've always been asked if we're twins. And so I was like, just cut my hair off. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, just cut it all off. Because when she used to take an inch off, I would panic, freak out, cry. Why'd you take so much off? And she's like, you want me to take off all your hair? And I was like, yeah. And I will never forget when she cut all the hair off, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my identity. I have not changed my hair for 14 years. I used to style it differently every day. I used to pull half of it up or push it sideways or curl it or leave it straight. I could never decide on anything. I've had my hair the same exact way for 14 years and never will I ever want to change it. I just don't ever see that happening. I just felt like, this is who I'm meant to be. So I can appreciate you saying, I'm Avery, deciding on it. And it was so, and you were like, that's who I am now. And you were just completely comfortable with that. So, oh, that's so cool. I've never had anybody else that could ever even slightly appreciate what I went through. So very cool. Which really is a great segue into this song. So tell my audience what song you chose. I don't know if you want to talk about the lyrics first or you want to talk about your experiences first, or maybe it's intermingled, but you take it away, Avery.
Sure. So the song which really I connect to, and it can make me ugly cry whenever I need a good cry, is called She Used to Be Mine. It's by Sarah Bareilles. She wrote it for the musical Waitress. And it really just speaks to that moment when I was feeling so lost, unsure of who I was because so much had been taken away from me. And so I remember when I first heard this song, I was like, oh, this is such a sweet little LGBTQIA love song. Like, I just thought it was this woman singing about a love that she lost.
I thought maybe it was going to be the same.
Right? And I was like, this is really sweet. And so I was just put in my regular rotation, was listening to it again on a walk with a dog, and I started to listen to the lyrics more. And then it landed. Literally there, walking my dog, ugly crying.
I believe that.
Like sobbing and heaving. And I'm just like, well, we're like an hour away from the house. So here we go. So I'm just like walking and people are crossing the street and avoiding me. And I'm just like, it's fine. I'm good. Just letting it all out and just processing over here. And yeah, it just released so much of what I was feeling. And music has always been so impactful for me for so many different struggles between the sound and the beat, the melodies that intertwine, and then the words on top of that. It can really just speak to my heart and let it out. These bits of emotion that I don't know how to process on my own. And this song was absolutely that.
Yeah, I've had a guest say that the emotion is there inside of us, but the music helps us to bring it out and helps us to feel it. So I think that's kind of what you're describing. And I would agree. I mean, completely, absolutely the same.
Got a podcast? Are you loving it, but not loving how much time post-production takes? Or maybe you just have other tasks calling your name a little bit louder. Virtually You can help. Check out virtuallyouva.com, supporting you in all things podcasting, like editing, show notes, audiograms, and much more. See the link in the show notes. They're waiting to give you back your time. And on that note, let's get back to the show.
Is there a specific line when you were walking the dog and she said this line and you were just like, oh, that's it? Like, was there one that sparked the Waterworks?
Yes. And so it's the second verse where she says, it's not what I've asked for, but sometimes life just slips in through a back door and carves out a person and makes you believe it's all true. And now I've got you. So it was just like, life happens to you, and now this is who you are. And you have no choice, but here you go.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that.
I think so.
Because there's a lot of curveballs that we are not expecting, but we realize it's the hand we've been dealt. And so here we go.
Here we go. That's it. It's just about accepting and moving forward. It's very much like, okay, and now what?
Yeah. I like how the song starts out so tender, and then she's swirling in her emotions, and then it gets tender and it kind of eases out again. And it's just so like, I don't know what other word I would use for how it begins and ends so sweetly. And that's probably why you thought like it was a love song, right? And I think for our listeners, before you guys go listen to it, it starts out and she's talking about herself, and then she starts to describe this person. She's imperfect, but she tries. She's good, but she lies. She's hard on herself. She is broken and won't ask for help. She is messy, but she is kind. She is lonely most of the time. She is all of this mixed up, baked into a beautiful pie. She's gone, but she used to be mine. And so it's talking about that alter ego or that other personality. And maybe even LGBTQ folks can really resonate with this because you're trying to be that person. And then somehow you get this permission. And then you realize like, I was trying to be that person, but she used to be mine. But that's not who I am anymore.
Absolutely.
Wow. Before we started the interview, you said, woof, that's heavy. And it is. This is a heavy song, and I really love it. I love how it's chocked full of emotion. I like a song that will move me, right? Like, I don't want to just hear music in the background. I want to hear the story. I want to be moved. I want to make me be thoughtful or insightful or, spark some curiosity. This is a great song that you chose. First of all, what else speaks to you in this song?
So when you described it earlier as it starts off tender, then it gets this really strong emotion, and then it goes tender again.
Mm-hmm.
That experience also really resonates with me, because I feel like people who grow up with a history of trauma or complex trauma, anger is a dangerous emotion. It's scary to get angry. So you repress anger. But truly, especially in experiences like mine that include covert grief, like you didn't lose a loved one, but you did lose a lot. So that kind of grief still requires anger to move through. And if we don't allow ourselves to express that anger, then we actually just skip over. And we're not in acceptance at the end. We're just in numb dissociation. We still have to release the anger in order to get there. And so this song, because of that ebb and flow, it really reminds me of the moment that I came to peace with this new me, this new diagnosis. And that's what led me to the journey of becoming Avery. And so I was walking on the treadmill and journaling at the time, because we've got this little desk thingy set over the treadmill. And I was just writing to the part of me that houses this illness. And I call her Emmy because it's myalgic encephalomyelitis, and that is a mouthful. So Emmy is short for ME, encephalomyelitis. Anyway, so I was writing to her and just saying, like, this is not fair. I don't understand why you had to show up. I didn't want this, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, I got angry. And it was just deep in my body, so angry. And then my fingers were just like typing so fast and getting it all out. And then once I had let the anger out, I realized that I needed to not fight this part of me. I needed to hold it. This was still a part of me that deserved compassion and understanding. And once I brought that in, again, the ugly crying. And I couldn't even see. I was like, this is probably not safe to be walking on the treadmill. So I got off, and then I was like a pile on the floor, just accepting. So she brings you through that emotional experience when you're just like fighting it a little bit at the beginning with the words, when she's just like, this place, this life has taken more than I've given it. This is not fair. I didn't ask for this. And then she gets into that anger. And then at the end, she's like, it's okay. I'm gonna be okay. And so that whole experience also really summarizes what I went through.
Well, and it sounds like the grief process, right? Like at first you're in denial, and then you go through grieving, and then you kind of get to that point of acceptance. So I think that that's totally normal. When you said the numb association, it reminded me of, do you know the current song, Do You Ever Get a Little Bit Tired of Life?
Yes.
Like you're not really happy, but you don't want to die. And it's talking about being numb. You get to that point where you just kind of, sometimes you're just overwhelmed and you got to work through it. And I've also heard it when you said some people never actually face that anger. And I've heard it said that if you have this ball of anger and you experience at a 3, now you can be happy at a 3. If you let the emotion, you can experience it at a 6. Now you can also experience happiness at a 6. Like it's a yin and yang of the emotions. But if you never really process the one, you don't really get to feel the extreme opposite either. So I think it's wise that you've taken the time to work through it and face it and, coming out on the other side. And I mean, really, you're doing some kind of cool things with your business. I don't think did we dig into it at all? I don't think so. So say a little bit about your business, and then y'all, she has a podcast to go with it. So tell me what you're doing, how you've used your mess as your message. We'll break from the song for a minute, and I want to dive into this quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So my business is really centered around other people that have gone through significant identity shifts, or they've been living in numb dissociation for a while. So typically these are highly sensitive, high achievers that equate their worth with how much they can accomplish and how much they can help other people. So that's really into the people-pleasing side of things, where you deprioritize yourself to the point that you are surviving by the skin of your teeth and you're just trying to get by, but you're running out of steam. So usually that's when I meet people. And so we start off it's called the flow state membership. We're looking to calm down that nervous system, regain control over the stress switch, regain control over our thoughts. And then once you've been able to get into that space, when you're able to trust yourself enough, that's when we dive in to really redefine who you are and redefine your worth. And that's when I have a group program to help people through that.
Yeah, super awesome. Do you have men and women, or you just support women? Do you have a specific focus?
So men and women. I find the men that come into these programs, they feel like they have nowhere else to go. Because as a highly sensitive man, it's really hard to get the support that you need. So when you feel like you're being judged for how emotional you are as a man, you need that safe space. So yeah, it's a combination of both.
Yeah. And then a little bit about your podcast. I have a guess that it supports your business or the ideas of your business. I love the title. So say your title and then tell us, what you kind of talk about on your podcast.
Absolutely. So the title of the podcast is called Inner Stillness, Outer Chaos. And so it's all about finding that grounding and that peace within. So we rotate between different kinds of episodes. There's one where I teach about the stress management experience, the nervous system regulation, different kinds of aspects around that, and with an actionable strategy that you can start using right away. One of the episodes is where I share some of my own personal experiences, like what we talked about here, and sharing the learning that I've gained from those difficult challenges.
Yep.
And then the last kind of episode that I have is when I bring other people on to share their own story of loss, resilience, and overcoming. And often those loss experiences aren't related to the loss of a person or the loss of a pet or a loss of a loved one. It's really identity loss. So it's just helpful to hear that you're not alone.
It's monumental. I mean, sometimes you do feel like you're the only one experiencing it, or you're the only one that's ever gone through it. And just, unfortunately, misery loves company. It just feels good to know you're not alone. So I think that that's right. That's really good that you're taking care of other people in that way. And like I said, one of my other guests, your mess as your message. And I think that's what you're doing. And I think that that's amazing work. So good for you.
Thank you.
Let's go back to your song just a little bit. I want to know, when do you put this song on? Or when you hear the song, does it make you go back to December 25th when you were like, I'm Avery? What do you feel? What adventure do you go on when this song comes on? Or do you choose to put it on? Is there a time? I know you said, I think when you need a really good cry.
Yeah, it's always good unleashing a little bit of tears, which is always nice. I used to have it in my regular rotation, just while I was still doing a lot of processing. Now, though, that it's been a while since I've really needed to release that kind of experience, I've come to a lot more peace about it. So now I just choose to listen to it when I'm ready.
Yeah.
That being said, it's probably still about once a week, just because I find it comforting. I feel like it reminds me to go back and comfort that part of me that's still struggling. Because let's be honest, grief never goes away. It's always going to keep resurfacing in different ways. So anytime I feel that come up again, I just go back and listen to the song on repeat a couple times and just allow it to really settle in.
It's such a beautiful song. I am thankful I have not experienced that kind of grief. I know my time is coming sooner than later because I'm 42 and my parents are aging and my husband's parents are even older, and it scares the crap out of me. So it's nice to hear how people do deal with grief. And I've heard it said that you don't really get over it. You just learn how to process it better at each time those waves come up. And so I think if you have not experienced grief like myself, I guess, fortunately, this is such a beautiful song. You don't have to have experienced grief. You can just listen to the song because Sarah Bareilles' voice is so beautiful. Like I said, it's so tender and it goes into that turmoil and it resolves itself with the tenderness again. And it's just a beautiful song.
I'm really glad you liked it. I was hoping it'd be something that people maybe hadn't heard before, just to mix it up.
Yeah. Well, y'all know it's going to be on the playlists. So check it out on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music. And it's simply called Memories of the Beat, the playlist. And so you can listen to any song from the podcast. Was there anything more that you want to say about this song, Avery?
I think just that if anybody that listens to this takes one thing from the song and one thing from this conversation, is that learning how to show more compassion to yourself is always a good thing. And this song really just summarizes that. And so really, if we can just show just a tiny bit more compassion to ourselves, this world will become a better place.
Amen. I completely agree. Great last note. Podcast land, I hope that this episode was music to your ears. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? You never know what rabbit holes we'll get to go down and explore. Were you reminded of anything? Or anyone? Share what it was with me in a review. Honestly, the reviews don't do me any favors other than knowing people like you are listening to this podcast. Insert cheesy wink. However, the ratings do help, so leave me 5 stars. You know you wanna. This podcast was produced by Virtual You, supporting you in all things podcasting.
To connect or check me out on social media, I mean, I know you're just going to stalk me. But see the show notes, as always, for details. Can't wait to dive into my next guest's memories with a beat. Hit subscribe now. You don't want to miss the next episode.